Hi, this is Bill Hartzer, and today is September 26th, 2019, and this is the Bill Hartzer podcast for Thursday, September 26th. I have the pleasure of having Lily Ray from Path Interactive here today. Welcome, Lily. Tell me a little bit about yourself and how you've gotten into, SEO and where, and actually where how you became, I guess, an eat expert, or that we're going to talk about today.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me. My name is Lily Ray. I'm the director of SEO at Path Interactive. We are a digital marketing agency in New York City, and I've been doing SEO for about 10 years. So I started out here in New York at a startup company where I learned SEO on the job, did a little work with Google Analytics, did some meta tagging, and moved on to a role where I was doing a lot more kind of like black hat link building type stuff. I didn't exactly know it was black hat at the time. It just worked really well. Um, and
Sure.
so then I learned about Penguin the hard way and moved on to the agency world where I've since been doing primarily white hat SEO for a lot of different companies. I was at my previous agency for about 6 years, and I've been here at Path for almost 2 years now as SEO director, and I have about 14 people on my team and about 80 clients that I work with day to day. As far as EAT goes, it was last year that we had a handful of clients that were doing really well with SEO. In fact, one of them was like an award-winning client, one of our best case studies. And one day we woke up and the August 1st update happened, and we lost a lot of our traffic that day. So it kind of sent me down the rabbit hole of trying to investigate what happened with that website and what's been happening with the algorithms as a whole. And kind of led me to learning more about EAT, which is an initiative Google's been working on for about 5 years now. But I definitely think over the last year, it's taken on a lot of importance in the SEO industry. So since that point, I've just been doing a lot of research on it and helping companies address EAT issues, including a handful of the sites that we work on here at my agency.
Sure. So we talk about EAT. It's actually expertise, authority, and trust. So, how do we define, that? I mean, I know that we can say we have expertise and that we're an expert, and I guess a lot of SEOs, define themselves as, SEO experts, even, if they have only a few years experience. But at the same time, we have, authority and trust. I believe, obviously, like with links or with, something, we can define trust, with the fact that, okay, we have trusted links, or trusted sites linking to us. But, how do we really define, expertise, authority, and trust? And how do you think Google is defining it?
Yeah, so I think it's really important to first understand the concept of YMYL, which is your money, your life, which is another acronym that Google uses throughout its documentation when it talks about EAT. And the reason it's important to understand YMYL is because the level of EAT that you need, that's required for your website or that you need to focus on, is going to be contingent on how YMYL your website is. So if you're a website that talks about health conditions, financial topics, politics, news, legal topics, things that can really have an impact on people's health or their well-being or financial success, EAT is going to be really important for you. As an SEO agency, probably somewhere in the middle. I don't think that, you have to be the best SEO expert with 15 years of experience to be the one that ranks the best necessarily. But, it does seem to be the case that for certain queries that are more YMYL in nature, Google's really starting to analyze who's behind the content, who are the experts that are writing the content and reviewing the content, and what's the reputation of those experts as well as the company itself. So it's become a bigger consideration in the past year, but again, it's increasingly important depending on how YMYL your content is.
Sure. So really, there's a lot of sites that don't really need to pay too much attention to YMYL. I mean, a local business that's just providing a local service, maybe they're doing, home inspections or building fences. doing plumbing. Sure, I mean, I guess you could say a plumber has, it could be a YMYL site because it's your money and your life if your plumbing is having an issue or your air conditioning is out and it's really, really hot.
Hmm.
But I guess that's a stretch.
Hmm.
But so do all sites really need to even pay attention to eat?
Yeah, so I think there's kind of a section of the internet that's relatively safe from this. So, like in the past 24 hours, for example, there's been a new core algorithm update that started rolling out yesterday. I've been looking very closely at a lot of the different companies that we work with here at my agency, and probably something like 75% of them are unaffected by this. Their traffic patterns haven't changed too much. But then when you start to get into the topics that are more health related, particularly more like natural wellness and natural medicine, we see pretty wild fluctuations. So I think, if you're a local business and, people generally like your services, you're generally going to be fine. This isn't going to impact your performance on Google Maps or anything like that. But when you start to venture into the area where you're producing content, as you mentioned before, you might get into kind of a gray area where, it can have an impact on people's lives, how their home is constructed or if their air conditioning works. So it's important to think about EAT when you're producing content because you want the people that are reading it to be able to say, like, do I trust this person to give me advice, on repairing my air conditioner? Or is this like a company that hired a college student that's never actually done something like this before just to write cheap articles? So there's like
Sure.
yeah, go ahead.
So basically, so you mentioned articles. I mean, and actually the expertise of the author of the content,
Mhm.
and so that actually, as I understand, plays a really big role into EAT and actually being able to, I guess, prove to the reader that you have expertise and the writer of the content, where you say it's by the contents written by Bill Hartzer or by Lily Ray or
Hmm.
whoever the author is. Certainly, we want that name to be associated there, but as well as certainly what I have been doing and recommending is that we then link or somehow have a way for the reader to see more information about that particular author, whether that means a clickable link to their bio or having a bio at the bottom of the page or with a link and so forth.
Yeah. Yeah, there's different implementations of it, and companies are getting really creative because I think some companies, for example, might not want to have an author's name on every page, but I've seen successful companies that have performed well after these algorithm updates just say this was published on behalf of the company, and then that name of the company might be linkable, and you can go click on that and learn more about who they are and what their editorial policy is, and maybe some of the names of the people on their leadership team. I've seen that work before, but
Sure.
generally speaking, yes, it's better to have a name associated to it. A lot of people ask, well, like, I've never really written content before, but I'm a plumber and I like plumbing and I have a lot of experience. So I always recommend, well, then just start putting your name on things, and create a biography and maybe associate it to your LinkedIn profile or to somewhere you've been mentioned in the news or something like that, and start to build up your own EAT online. So there's creative ways of implementing it, but definitely a good first step is to think about how you can incorporate your names and the experts at your company's names onto your content.
So so the websites that are been hit have been hit. I mean, primarily, they're YMYL sites, but are is it the YMYL site that's getting hit, or is it the actual content, or sections of the site that are getting hit, or rank? When I say hit, are they're not ranking as well as they were previously.
Hmm. Yeah, there's one really interesting example that Glenn Gabe pointed out after, I believe it was the March core update earlier this year, and that was Dr. Mercola, and he's a natural medicine doctor where like 75% of his website was hit. But if you start to analyze what was hit and what was not, the diet section, the fitness section, the wellness and health and supplements and things like that, that was all hit pretty hard. He lost most of his organic visibility in those categories. But then there's this one section of his website, and it's the pets section, where he has, experts on veterinary health and pet wellness contributing articles. And that section remained completely flat. So that was a really interesting example where it seems to be topical. And I've also seen examples where the company's core products and services continue to rank okay, but then they maybe have a lot of articles about natural remedies for things or about supplements, and those are the pages that took the biggest hit.
So do you think there's, yeah, one of the questions I guess a lot of people have, or at least I have, is how is, Google potentially determining, what is good content and what is not, and do they actually have, maybe people actually looking at this and giving some kind of yay or nay type of situation where, okay, this person is trusted and this is not, or is it, some kind of algorithm that is, that's basically looking and associating maybe authorship or saying, okay, well, Willie Ray or Bill Hartzer or so-and-so, so-and-so wrote this content. So, so that and it links to their bio and the algorithm sees it and they know that they're part of the knowledge graph and they can be trusted and so forth. I guess my concern is that why, that maybe somebody, on a black hat way might even just start taking somebody's name that, and literally just saying, okay, well, and putting their name on somebody else's content, or taking their content, associating somebody else's name on it, saying they wrote it, and it's not they do it more, kind of in a black hat way, right? Trying to trick the algorithm. So do we think this is actually human people looking at it, or do you think it may be even a combination of that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So what Google will say about that is that they use human reviewers, 10,000 a year or something like that, to manually review content and provide feedback to Google, which they then use to benchmark and inform, the algorithm and improve the algorithm to try to kind of mimic how human beings would rate the stuff from a quality standpoint. So that's what Google said over and over, which is, it's interesting. But then, as SEOs, as technical people, we want to figure out like, how could that be possible from an algorithm standpoint? I think you definitely brought up a good point about, the knowledge graph. I think that does play a big role. As far as like putting an expert's name on the page and misusing someone's name, I think that's actually one of the built-in defense mechanisms of EAT is that people don't want their names being misused. So as soon as you put your name on a piece of content, you want that content to be trusted and relevant. And I think that's actually one of the nice features of this is like it becomes more trustworthy when you know that that person is behind it because their name is on it and it's linked to their LinkedIn profile and to their Twitter account and their personal website. So they don't want a bad reputation online. But, a lot of people have said, oh, wouldn't this be an easy thing to spam? I can just put some, experts on my page and create author bios and create like fake profiles for these people. I think that it's not that simplistic. I think that Google looks at a lot of different signals, not only in terms of who the expert is, but also the content quality. Is there citations on the page? Does this stuff kind of line up with, scientific consensus or historical consensus, and a lot of different elements that they're looking at for page quality. So I don't think there's an easy way to black hat or to kind of game EAT.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing is that I've kind of, the conspiracy theorist part of me says, okay, well, maybe Google has this way of actually looking at a piece of content, and there are certain ways everybody writes. And so there may be a way to determine that that because the way this article was written, which either, well, if you look at somebody's content, you can, and if you write a lot and you review a lot of content, you can kind of tell that a certain person kind of wrote certain content. I mean, it's kind of like there are certain ways they write. There are certain certain phrases that they may use. And so there's kind of like a footprint to way certain people write. And so, that may be something that that they might probably not be looking at because it might not be scalable as far as an algorithm goes and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess it's at the future it's potentially possible, and looking at content.
Yeah.
So if your site or your client site has been hit, what where do you even begin to start to try and recover from something, if you've really kind of determined that, okay, this must be eat
Mm-hmm.
because we don't have any author bios, or we don't have any authors on our content. But where do we even start to begin to recover?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think the first and most important thing to do is take a look at what in particular was hit on your website. Was it the entire website, or was it just a section of the website? And if so, was some of your blog safe, but then the other half of your blog was hit? And I've definitely seen that happen for some companies. So if you have a section that was hit and you think it's because of EAT, I recommend that people look at what is ranking for the keywords that you used to rank for, and start to kind of compile notes about what does it look like to be able to rank for this keyword now. For a lot of YMYL keywords, if you're talking about something that's science related, for example, or health related, you're going to see a lot of big players consistently ranking every time, like Healthline and WebMD, and some science journals and things like that. And they have certain page elements that are pretty consistent across the board. So they have long articles, not saying that word count is a ranking factor, because Google keeps making that very clear. But for
Sure.
certain topics, it's important to be very long and have deep kind of analysis and a lot of citations and backing things up and the right amount of depth to your article. Citations is one thing I mentioned. So just making sure that you are linking out to reputable publications to kind of back up your claims, not putting vague claims out there without actually citing your evidence. And yeah, tone is also important. I've been using some tools to kind of analyze readability and formality of text. And, you might notice on some like natural medicine websites, the authors are a little bit snarky or like pedantic sometimes, because they're like questioning, like science or the mainstream medical advice. And that tone, I don't think actually works really well in this new kind of EAT focused landscape. So I would just suggest that people go out there and look at who is ranking and what are they doing, what does their content look like now, and do a little research into who those authors are and what their claims are, is a good place to start.
Great. So as marketers, we're not necessarily writing content, but we hire writers all the time, and to write content. So how or what should we be telling our writers about content, and how they need to? You mentioned kind of the snarkiness, if you will, on certain type of content.
Mm-hmm.
So what should we be telling our writers, and how do we describe eat and so forth to them?
Mm-hmm. So, if you're writing on YMYL topics, it's really important to follow a high standard of professionalism with your writing. So, citing your sources, a lot of high performing companies are using like a bibliography type format on YMYL content. Thinking about tone within that content. So maybe saving the personality for other types of articles and really just focusing
Sure.
on being as high quality and professional as possible. I'm doing an analysis in my upcoming talk for PubCon where I looked at actual like reading level of content for the winning
Yep.
websites compared to losing sites. And there's definitely some data to support that the winning websites have a higher reading level. And then, yeah, I mean, I think it depends again on the content itself. So there's definitely a time and place to have some flavor with your writing and have a unique writing style. But if you're trying to rank for something like cancer treatment, it's going to be really important to kind of up the ante in terms of content quality.
Yeah, definitely. So how are you using archive.org and the Wayback Machine for EAT research?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I love the Wayback Machine. What it allows you to do is look at a snapshot of a given page, assuming it has it in the index, at two different points in time. So it actually rolled out a feature earlier this year where you can compare a snapshot of the page maybe last year compared to this year, and you can see side by side a lot of the changes that they've made to the page. So what I've noticed for a lot of companies that seem to be investing very heavily in EAT is you can kind of tell that someone went through all the content. You might even see the author's name change or like the addition of a reviewer of that content, like a medical reviewer. And then a lot of the facts and the tone and the editing and grammar and everything kind of changes from time to time. So that's a really nice tool to use if you're trying to see like, oh, this company gained a lot of traction since the last update. What are some of the changes that they've made to their content?
Cool. So I know you're going to be at PubCon Vegas talking about EAT and in your presentation. So I'm really hoping to catch your presentation there and talk to you further a little bit about it. So what are you going to be discussing? What are you going to be talking about?
Yeah, so I'm really excited to be speaking with Marie Haynes specifically about EAT. So I'm going to be doing an analysis, or rather, I've already done the analysis. I'm going to be presenting an analysis on 60 plus websites, winners and losers from the past year, to look at about 30 different attributes of their websites and to see like what winners are doing and what losers are doing across the board. So as I mentioned before, things like reading level, things like the presence of author bios, linking out to external citations, just like how those companies are handling these types of page elements. And I think there's some really interesting takeaways as far as what the winners are doing compared to the losers. So super excited to share that.
Yeah, so hopefully my schedule and will coincide and work out so that I can hit your be there and for your presentation. So I'm going to be talking specifically about SEO audits and the SEO audit process, as well as helping out Majestic.com there. So
Awesome.
looking forward to connecting. And so anyway, it's been good talking to you this afternoon. And how can people get in touch with you?
Yeah, well, first, thanks for having me. If you want to
Sure.
get in touch with me, the best way is Twitter. So my name is Lily Ray NYC on Twitter. I also work here at my agency, Path Interactive. So that's pathinteractive.com or just Path Interactive, one word on Twitter. We offer algorithm update support or EAT analysis, that type of thing as a service that we offer within our SEO department. So we're really excited to take on more future projects.
All right, sounds great. So thanks for joining me this afternoon, and I will see you in Las Vegas in just a couple weeks.
Awesome. I'll see you there. Thanks for having me.
Okay, thanks.
All right. Bye.